Welcome to another episode. Today I'm joined by Say, co-founder of Fomo, an app that's turning trading into in the trenches into an interactive social experience.
Nice to be on with you.
First off, congrats on all the recent traction. I've tried the product. Honestly, it reminds me of the first time I used Phantom a few years ago. It just feels super intuitive, clean, and it just feels like a level up in terms of user experience.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think, Phantom's one of the products that have continued to kind of pave the way for user experience, right? I think they came at a time when it was a very janky experience to use Solana. There was a lot of people trying to kind of find their footing. So, definitely respect the team there and what they've built. So appreciate that.
How have the last few months been for you guys? Did you expect this wave of attention so quickly?
Yeah, honestly, the truthful answer is no. I think that, we're committed to building this for a very long time, and we've built apps before, right? We come from a background of DYDX, Uniswap, OpenSea, and a couple of other projects. And we kind of understand, hey, it's a slow grind. You have these events where you continue to try to add more users, and then you have these explosive events where you try to retain as many users as possible. And I think it's hard to predict. So I think every time it happens, it's very surprising, but it's mostly been product led. So we're very proud of that.
And you mentioned you guys are from DYDX and other core crypto companies. So I don't feel go into a little bit about your background, your crypto lore, and what led you to build FOMO.
Yeah, definitely. So my first real exposure to crypto, at least on-chain trading, was I was working at Deutsche Bank on the investment banking side. This was probably around 2020, 2021. And a friend of mine, was like, hey, there's all these other blockchains that are coming out that are not Ethereum. You should come take a look. And he ended up sending me, an RPC and a leaked bridge for Avalanche before their kind of official bridge went live. So I remember sending some funds over and thinking, man, this is a really good experience to actually trade. At the time, the only comparison was Ethereum, right? So you had to pay $20 per gas. It was very slow. So it just kind of felt like this magical moment where I could think about, what does this actually lead to in the future? You can actually trade assets easy. You can transfer value. You can, create all these suites of products around EVM and eventually SVM as well. So that's kind of how we got into crypto. Ended up buying a few of the coins there early, Joe, Time, a few others, and ended up making a decent amount of money, at least compared to the salary I was making at the time. And I remember thinking, okay, well, there's definitely edge to be had. So how do I continue to dive deeper and deeper on chain? And since then, I've been very, very active across pretty much every single meta that's existed in the trenches. And alongside that, in 2022, my co-founder now, Paul, he actually had moved to the YDX after 6 months on the job at Deutsche Bank. So we had worked together there as well. And he was like, hey, we're trying to build out the BD team. Why don't you come over, see what it's like? And at this time, I think my interest in crypto was almost starting to get to the point where, it was manic and very, very exciting. So I said, okay, why not? Interviewed and spent 2 years building the book of business there. We scaled the institutional market making book from about 5 market makers to over 100 by the time we left. And then I spent a year after that leading the core trading product at DYDX. So have decent experience across, product and BD and a number of things, but those have all been really helpful as we got ready to build FOMO. And for FOMO specifically, I think one of the things we were really interested in as the trenches were really hot, think about peak whiff days where how do you actually get, normal people to actually trade these coins in a way that's not super difficult? And I think Telegram bots and trading terminals, did a pretty good job of onboarding some number of these people. But in my mind, they've kind of captured a large majority of the TAM there. There's only so many people in the world who are willing to actually set up all these things, understand how things work under the hood, and use the thing in a competitive way. So for us, we thought that it was going to be this experience that is abstracting away all the blockchain, abstracting away all the gas fees, the wallets, the seed phrases, the signatures, the approvals, the bridges, and just being able to let people swipe to buy just like they would in an app like Robinhood. So it's been, top of mind for us to really focus on user experience. And then on top of that, how do you continue to progress the user in their user journey? So social layer is really important. You have the leaderboard, the spotlight, the feed, the ability to constantly be in tune, understand what top traders are doing and really learn from them time and time again.
I think any person that comes into crypto not from Ethereum roots, you started from Avalanche, right? They get the multi-chain thesis very quickly. I feel, of course, I was onboarded to crypto with Ethereum, but then I started using Solana pretty early. So it always was super natural to me that there have to be multiple blockchains, right? There's no way all crypto activity just happens on Ethereum. And I think that that's one of these insights that I feel a lot of OG players missed for the first few years, but now it's become super apparent. And you also have trading experience, right? So how does that help you in building a crypto company? Because a lot of founders in crypto are not necessarily from crypto, right? But you have this unique edge of like understanding the user because you're yourself a user as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue it's one of the most important things. We've spent a number of years building all these products, and I think that the number one thing we always came back to is like listen to the user, try to understand, put yourself in the shoes of the user, dog food the product, really make sure you're testing out end to end what this looks like from a real experience. But one of the things you come to realize is like you can't really replicate that. Like you either use the products or you don't, right? And I think that in crypto today, one of the biggest edges is like people who actually use the products, investors who actually use the products, you know, people who get a sense of what is actually going on. Do I enjoy this experience as a user myself? And how do I improve this for myself in such a way that I think other people will benefit? So I think when we started FOMO, I was pretty much the only one on the team that traded extensively. And now, there's 10 of us and every single person trades. I wouldn't say religiously. I think it's very market dependent, but
Yeah.
in such a way where they actually understand like I really wish I had this feature, or this needs to be a little bit faster, or that's not a really good animation after the fact. And you need to really like hone in on these little details that really matter to the end user. Because I think like, as you are probably well aware, crypto users are willing to jump through any hurdle, right? So you don't always get like the highest level of polished feedback and the highest level of animation feedback and things that actually matter to like retail users. So it's important for the team to have a really good sense there and understand, if I was on both sides of the scam, how would I use this, and then become those users themselves.
Yeah, I mean, for crypto users, it's very simple, right? Like, if there's an opportunity to make money, like we'll jump through any hoops required, and we'll be there, right? So you technically don't get any product feedback, but like you get market feedback that there is demand for like this particular use case in your specific niche. Like the trading bot space has a lot of players, right? Like I think when the trenches were hot last year, there were players coming out left, right, and center like Axiom, Photon. So you've of course added another element to it with the social trading aspect of it. But like, how do you see this space, and how do you see um, FOMO kind of making a place for itself right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's iterations in the trenches, right? You go from the wallet, you go to the Telegram bot, you go to the trading terminal. And I honestly think like that's probably the final stage when it comes to like the most advanced product. And I think in a lot of ways, it did a lot of good for the on-chain ecosystem. It added new participants, gave them easier vehicles to trade. But I think the thing that it really didn't do well in is it really shortened the life cycle of your trade, right? So it went from used to hold a coin for years to months to weeks to days to hours to minutes to even seconds. And I think that what ends up happening in a game like this is it's akin to like the HFT wars, right? Eventually you get to this point where this game is solved by a select few people or a select group of people, and it's not really worth anybody else to play, right? Like I wouldn't go in and try to market make against like Jump or Jane Street or whoever else, Tower. And the reason for that is like it's no longer competitive enough for me to actually come in and compete. It's super competitive when you're one of the few that actually do it well. So I think what this leads to is a tradition of people wanting to hold tokens more and hold them for longer and try to cultivate the original spirit of the trenches, right? Which is this like hodl mentality, like this let's all like rally around something and actually believe in something and build it up over time. There's a number of players that still do that. But I think, in a world where that happens, an app like FOMO is actually the best place to be because user experience is very, very simple. We're mobile currently, but we're going to be cross-platform, across web, Telegram, and anything else you're interested in trading. We're going to be able to allow you to tap into every single chain quite easily without having to bridge, without having to set up new wallets. And on top of that, you're going to have this social layer that's powered by crypto's best traders, right? Like I go on the leaderboard sometimes and I see some of the people that I used to look up to
Yeah.
trading in the trenches, and it's like, man, like that's really cool that you're here. I really get to study your game and understand how you do things. And I think that that's kind of how we continue to make a wedge for ourselves. At this point, I think we are probably one of, if not the top cross-chain trading app in crypto. We're probably just slightly behind some of the players on Solana as well. I think we're probably like third or fourth, sitting behind guys like Axiom, Phantom, and Jupiter. But I think people are starting to understand that like you can actually find a niche in this trading element that isn't just like get in, get out, and try to capitalize on like seconds or minute long momentum. So in that world, we're really excited to see where that progresses. And at the end of the day, like we think everybody can benefit from using this app, whether you're a crypto native or a normal user.
In a way, this paradigm sort of already existed, right? Like, let's say we all have our favorite KOLs, and everybody has some of their wallets, right? That they're tracking, and in a way, we're looking at what are they holding, and if they're still holding it, and kind of copy trading. But FOMO does it in a way cleaner way. Like it kind of integrates both these sides of the trenches and brings it all together in one interface. If you think about it, like Murad did it with his portfolio, where he had like 50 million at some point, and then everybody was basically just looking at his portfolio and holding on, like you said, for longer, because like their cult hero was still in that coin. So I feel like FOMO does that for every trader and every person using the app.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you nailed on one of the things, and you didn't put too much emphasis on it, but I think FOMO is very different than like labeling a wallet, right? Because when you label somebody's wallet on, CLO or Ray or KOL scan, it's like you're actually, not having them be culpable, right? You're just saying, this is your wallet. We found some data. It's linked to you and people are going to track it. I think it's not like a 2x difference. It's like a 10x difference when the person decides, I'm going to connect my Twitter. I'm going to, make myself culpable for all my actions, and I'm going to do these things publicly where everybody can see. Because I think reputation is one of those things where, at least in crypto, you can build it up and you can build it down, but you can always build it back up. And there's all these like, journeys that a user goes through in their like reputation and what people perceive them to be. But I think that's largely because there hasn't been this transparency layer, right? Like if you had a record of every single thing being done, not just, main wallets, but side wallets and everything of the sort under that person, you could actually start to develop this like identity reputation that's like pretty canonical across all people. If somebody decides to like sell on their farmers every 5 seconds, for example, and
Mm.
they have opted into adding their Twitter, they're just admitting to you directly that, hey, like I don't really care, like I am going to do this and profits mean more than reputation. And I think that we've seen some of these effects, some for better, some for worse, kind of start to magnify in FOMO. So it's cool to see that culpability does kind of reinforce, better social behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, there's no speculation now. Like, if a KOL has a wallet, we know that it's your wallet, right? Have you seen anything interesting? Like, any examples of just people dumping on their followers after shilling or buying a coin?
Yeah, I mean, I think as the platform that kind of facilitates all the network, we try to remain pretty neutral. One of the
Yeah.
things that we're actually planning to do is add average hold time. And this is a very objective stat, right? It's like we're not indicating that, you are a scalper. We're not indicating you're a long-term investor. We're not, suggesting anything. We're just letting users know, like, hey, you're a retail user. You come onto this application. This guy's made $300,000 in a week. You should understand that his hold time is 2 minutes. Maybe your time horizon is 2 days, 2 hours, 2 weeks. In which case, like the biggest reason why people get hurt a lot of the times, just like blindly tailing people, is they're not sure what the time horizon is. And I think crypto is really interesting because you'll have people write elaborate theses about a project, and then 4 hours later, they don't hold the token anymore. So I've never seen anything like it, honestly. But you at least get to understand, like, from a user point of view, like what is the thing that they're trying to do, and is
Mhm.
it in my advantage to, just completely ignore it, or am I actually going to benefit from understanding this because we have similar time horizons?
And in terms of like your target audience, I know from the onboarding experience, I know like you're targeting normies, and in a way, we had Moonshot earlier, and like they had their own uh, system around like onboarding normies and like listing tokens. um do you Are you building features for normies as your main target audience? Because like some of the features that you talked about, like the holding period and all of those things, these are super useful insights for everyone, but especially for normies, right? Like who are just getting onboarded to crypto, to that specific token, maybe from like a YouTube video.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's two parts to that question, and I think the first part of it is like the way we consider our core user group on FOMO is twofold. One is your creators who are your traders, right? On FOMO, it's a social network where instead of having to post like Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat or wherever else, your content is automatically generated based off of the activity that you do. So there's no opt-in feature. And we have a proprietary algorithm that actually like will sort you based off of certain metrics. So are you a profitable trader? Is your sizing large? Is it deviating from, what is your average size? Like all these elements to make sure that we can have, elements in the app, like the feed be highest signal to noise ratio. So traders are creators, people like yourselves who come on, they know what to buy. They're actually creating content for everybody else. And then the other side of this is normies, right? People who otherwise will not be able to trade on chain. We've done about $5 million of app play volume so far. And a lot of these users, like I would say overwhelming majority are actually normies. They come from TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And for them, the value appeal is one, you can sign in with Apple ID or Google. You can two, Apple Pay to buy a token. And then three, you can start trading and following people immediately. And that all happens within 60 seconds. So you can have this seamless experience where you can actually buy assets you've always wanted to. And then on top of that, you can build your repertoire and understand how things work. So it's a reflexive economy where both user groups actually really benefit from this experience of, great UX. You can trade cross chain. You don't need to worry about managing balances, and you can actually track your portfolio cross chain very easily. But I would say these kind of communities feed into each other, or it's reflexive, right? Just like any other social media platform, the creators are maybe 1%. These are people who power the app. These are people who are going to continue to actually provide alpha to everybody else and interesting materials. The normies provide, their attention and, their willingness to understand and learn. And it's this reflexive economy where these traders actually really benefit from increased social capital. And we're going to roll out more features such that they actually can monetize this over time. And then retail users benefit from the stream of information. So you align the parties to actually be like in each other's mutual best interest in a lot of ways. And that creates this really, really cool economy where it doesn't matter where you are on the stack, as long as you are a person who wants a better user experience and, less friction, you're going to benefit from this app. And there's a number of improvements we have to make sure that that's even, more of a compelling case as we continue to scale.
I think you had this tweet where you talked about like the best social apps, how they allow single player games to become multiplayer games. So in a way, you're trying to do that for retail users as they come on chain. They can basically make trading into a multiplayer game with their friends, KOLs, and like sort of have a social aspect to it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the first order effects of that right now are that people join and they follow top traders and, that's all their kind of social interaction is. It's like learning from the guy who made $100,000 in a week. But I actually think as a social graph grows, it actually develops like this unique value proposition, which is like, let's say we're at 100 million users and it's likely that your friend is on the app. You can now follow each other. And as we add more asset classes, let's say like prediction markets, for example, you can see every time they bet, they make a bet on the Yankees game, they go bet on the election, they do this, and it just pops up on their profile. You can actually text them and be like, hey, like maybe even in app one day, just message them, say, hey, like what's going on here? Like, what are
Yeah.
you thinking? Like, and it's a way to like actually like stay in touch with friends via financial primitive, which it's always been written content. It's always been media. It's been activities like Strava for running, but it's never been finance. And I think that's like the largest untapped potential here because every single person in the world utilizes finance in some way and it takes different form factors, but I think we can try to fit all of that onto this ecosystem of products.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it sounds like a no-brainer, right? Like if I have to onboard a friend to buy a meme coin, instead of having them set up a wallet and like explaining the multi-chain landscape, use this, use that, like I can just tell them to get on FOMO and get started quickly. The only thing is like, how are you thinking about marketing then? Is it, are you banking on word of mouth? Like I would tell my friend, but then how do you reach out to the masses? Because that's your user, right? Like your potential target user is probably on TikTok and not on crypto Twitter. So you've cracked the crypto Twitter aspect of it because that has its own network effects, right? Like one trader makes money and then they start tweeting about it. Like it all just happened very quickly. So how are you thinking about marketing and outreach from like a broader normie perspective? How do you actually get normies on chain trading in the trenches?
Yeah, definitely. So we actually have two content managers that they manage about 40 to 50 creators. And, we post videos across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and a number of places where, you kind of find the crypto interested people.
Mhm.
So currently, I would say they do somewhere between like 2 to 6 million impressions a month, depending on, what month it is and what the market looks like and a lot of other dynamics. So that's been a really good primitive for us. And I think like, some people might say, why are you sharing that detail, right? We're going to just go and do it as well. But the thing I'll say is I've seen this be tried in a number of different ways. And unless you have a product that actually on its face stands alone to have enough value for a retail user, it doesn't matter, right? If it's a product, you can pour $100 million into marketing, you might get a billion views. But if the user is not fundamentally interested in the product and its use case, it doesn't matter. So I think that's why we're very comfortable just like being very straight up about it. I think we are very, very product focused and most of the growth has been product growth. But there's a number of things that we're tapping into now. We have some news coming out shortly that will help us kind of start to scale and expedite things. And it's going to be really exciting to kind of go along that journey. But there's definitely a lot of untapped channels still.
Why did you name it FOMO, by the way? Like, I love the name and it's like it has a very normie friendly ring to it, but is there a story behind the name?
Yeah, so that name Paul actually came up with. And I don't actually know exactly what prompted him to come up with the name, but I do know we've had a long conversation about like what is the meaning of FOMO and how do we kind of, shift the stigma that is FOMO. So I think people look at FOMO and they're like, okay, like fear of missing out, right? That's the easiest, simplest way to interpret it. And that's like the literal definition in a lot of ways. But the way we think about this is like FOMO is actually very submersive. It's like it's not fear of missing out. It's actually fearless of missing out. So it's like you're solving the problem of FOMO by using this app because you are able to be tapped into everything that's happening on chain via notifications. You can always monitor your positions. You can go do the thing you want to do. So you want to go, watch a movie with a friend. You have your phone. You don't have to miss out, right? You can always be connected if you need to, and you could also disconnect as well. And I think that it's kind of this like touch grass meme, right? It's like a lot of people spend 16, 18, 20 hours on the computer every single day in the trenches. And you should go do something. Don't miss out on life. Like it's not always about missing out on profits. There's a number of things that are equally as important, if not more important. And I would say for us, it's a very submersive meaning where we're actually trying to get you to prevent FOMO by having this app.
Mhm. Interesting. I mean, so I saw another tweet of yours, and where you said like your average user opens the app 20 times a day, and that's more than Instagram, right? So they're definitely not touching grass. And if they're in the trenches, like all of us have the habit of like either waking up in the middle of the night and like checking the charts or like checking your position. So I think like that's going to be super natural for FOMO users as well. Just opening the app continuously, and as you keep adding more features, more markets, I think that number will only increase.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where like the maximum kind of value there is. Like obviously it's not like 10,000, right? You can't open it 10,000 times a day. But it's interesting because we were actually speaking with Jack Brody, who he used to be the head of podcast Snapchat, and he's now the CPO at Suno. And we brought up the number. I think the exact number is actually like 18. And he's like, that's incredible because when he created Snapchat maps, or he was working on Snapchat maps where you would actually see like people's locations, in real time, they weren't able to pull for live location at the time because of how strict the regulations were with things. And they came to realize that like they actually didn't need to because the user opened the app 18 times a day. So every hour or so that they were awake, it would actually update where they were in real time.
Yeah.
And it was this really interesting and kind of funny moment. But yeah, I think we're in a similar place where there's a lot of value to being on the app that's not solely trading. You can see what's going on. You can get informed in daily summaries. We have weekly newsletters. We have all of these tools that allow the people to be constantly informed. And it's cool because another fun fact is if you've signed up to the app in, the last 6 months since we've been live and you've placed a trade, there's over a 50% chance that you're going to be on the app this week.
Hmm.
So it's incredible that people come back and like use the app in a lot of other ways. It's not just directly trading. And the analogy we like to make is like sometimes you go on Twitter and you don't tweet, but you just view, right? And that's completely normal behavior. Sometimes you go on the app and you don't trade and you just view. And that's kind of the early markings of like the social graph that people actually want to be a part of and, learn from.
I mean, I would say that's spot on because the trenches are not hot right now. Like I'm not actively trading, so I don't even have a reason to check charts or like check what's hot. So if people are doing that 20 times in these market conditions, like it's definitely for something more than just trading. And what do you think about like other social apps in crypto? I mean, there haven't been too many, but there was Friend Tech. I think Farcaster would be in the same category, and both of them have been huge successes. Friend Tech, of course, like fizzled out. But like, what are your thoughts on how crypto has done social apps before FOMO?
Yeah, I mean, I think Frentech was really like ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
I think that like, they did things like the bonding curve and they gave a key room and, chats, and they really got most of the biggest accounts in crypto to onboard. And they were really smart about the incentives there, which were, hey, you have all $80,000 in fees, you should come claim it. I mean, why
Mhm.
wouldn't you, right? So yeah, Frentech is interesting. I actually think that they had a lot of potential and somebody probably will pull off something similar in the future where there is this interest of connecting people. I think Time.Fund did a pretty good job of that as well. I know they're kind of slightly pivoting, but that's really cool to see. And Farcaster, I think, is another app that's been able to bootstrap a really good social network, predominantly crypto natives. Um, I think my honest assessment is like it's too early to tell, right? Like there's going to be a flurry of social apps that come into crypto. Everybody tries it every single year. It's kind of like this like gem that everybody has been looking for such a long time that nobody seems to be able to find, at least at scale. And I think for us, we feel like we're the best positioned, honestly, because
Yeah.
I wrote about this in an article, but the way we think about this is like too many people try to create social apps that are social and there's a secondary behavior that, compels them to be on the app. But that's really not how social networks work. Social networks only work because you're able to do something that, you want to do and you want to share with others in a way that is very different than anything that exists today, right? You consider Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, there is no second best, right? There's, a winner take all market or winner takes most market. And I think that's why social graphs are really interesting because you have the stickiness that's not just trading product, that's not just, a perp dex or a borrow lending pool or whatever it is. And you're able to get to this point where the social identity actually becomes the stickiest part of the stack. And for us, we think that activity is going to be trading. We think trading is the most basic, primitive, simplest thing to do, at least like when it comes to forms of speculation. And in a lot of ways, like everything is trading, right?
Mhm.
Prediction markets, people that are sports betting, people in slots, like everybody is trading odds in some way. And I think that the world will converge that this is going to be like the intended behavior or, one of the main behaviors of people who are interested in speculating. So we think that this is why FOMO is best positioned to capture the social graph because it actually compels people to do like the activity underlying and it's based off something that, people are interested in actually doing.
But do you not think trading is an activity that people do in isolation? Like me, for example, I don't want my friends or people to see what I'm trading, right? So is that a point of friction that you've considered? Because I would think that is a point of friction for me to onboard with like my real profile on FOMO, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everybody has their preferences, right? Like even in crypto Twitter, people are anon, people have pseudonyms. Like there's a lot of range of preferences when it comes to this, and I think that that's completely fine. So for you, like you might just go spin up an account, never connect your Twitter, and you might actually develop a new social graph. You might start following people that you've never heard of. You might say, this guy, he has 1,000 followers on Twitter, but 10,000 on FOMO. He's really interesting, and I like the way that he trades. And you start to develop a new social graph, which is actually the most powerful part. You can always bring your old social graph over, but if your preference is to start new, like nobody is stopping you from doing so. And in a lot of ways, that like kind of feels like the birth of crypto Twitter, right? There were
Yeah.
a lot of people who were doxxed. They decided, let me go anon, and you probably have the same people that existed 10 years ago in different forms.
I mean, if you think about it, there are so many stories on crypto Twitter where people are like, okay, I have a friend and they're not even active on Twitter and their profile has 50 followers, but they've made millions in the trenches, right? So someone like him can basically set up a FOMO account and do the same Anon profile thing, but then he would have 50,000 followers because he's such a goated trader in the trenches.
Exactly, right. And that's like, I think that's really rare because in a lot of these places, like you can't actually see performance. You can't see what people are doing. And it kind of reminds me of the FTX leaderboard where you could see
Mhm.
like the three, three-word names, like, GCR, for example. And a lot of his lore was just built up on being at the top of the leaderboard. Like that was an FTX assigned username. He just continued to crush time and time again. And who knows who he is, but who cares, right? He's developed his own social graph post that. And that's kind of how we view FOMO to operate, over the course of many, many years.
Interesting. I didn't think of it like that. I'm going to use that as an experiment, like see if I can bootstrap another social network for myself, like on FOMO, without my
Yeah.
real profile.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about performance and it's all about trading styles and how people feel about that. So I'm excited to see, hopefully we can do some sleuthing and figure out who you are, although we don't have too much information.
Yeah. I want to also know, like, your experience in the trenches, right? Like, what's your best trade till now? I think the best trade tells a lot about someone because that shows like what they've learned over the year in the trenches.
Yeah. I have a boring one and a not boring one. So I'll give
Look,
you,
both of both of them.
okay, I'll give you the boring one first. The boring one is I was a very early user of Hyperliquid and kind of noticed from very early on before points that it was going to be one of the premier dexes. So I ended up trading a lot on it and ended up across maybe 20 accounts being like a top 30, top 40 performer. So that's, easily the best trade that I've had when it comes to zero to whatever end up the airdrop ends up being. But the not boring one is I would say a few years ago, there was a GME token that launched. I don't know if you remember that on Solana. And this was right around the time the GME documentary and Roaring Kitty documentary was coming out. So I was actually working out in the gym with a friend of mine who is now an investor in the company. And I was trading this token called Zoomer. And I remember I was doing a trading challenge. I put 10K into it and it immediately rubbed, right? So really, really in despair, you know, something happens and then it has a little bit of a boost. So I end up selling for 4K. And I was like, okay, well, I have 4K left. And, it's kind of upsetting that I was able to just like burn 60% in 10 seconds. So I just am on tilt and I see GME coin come out. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to slam it all into it. This is a few hundred K market cap. And before there were all these like terminals and wallet bundlers and, whatever it might be. So I remember thinking like, all right, like whatever, I'm just going to finish my workout finishes, and I believe at the time it's up like, to 50K. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, that's amazing. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, at the time, she was like, you should sell it. And I'm like, no, no, no. I don't think you understand. Like, you haven't watched this documentary. Like, people go crazy about this. So I end up just leaving it later that night after, dinner, check. It's at like 300,000. Now she's kind of like, you have to sell it. What are you doing? So I'm just like, no, no, no. Like, I don't feel any urge to sell it. And long story short, through, a few days, maybe it was even longer, I ended up going from 4K where I was able to get like 2.5, 3% supply and just kind of ride it all the way up to the top, realizing it for low seven figures. And it was a moment where like I was just excited to share with everyone, like, hey man, I turned 4K into life-changing money. Like you can do it too, because there's really no like math to this. Like it's not like this is rocket science. So it was a really good opportunity to showcase that like there is potential in something like this. And I got a lot of friends on board, some doing really well, some not. But it was this moment that allowed me to like open the gates a little bit more to everybody else and feel like it was a game worth playing.
Nice. I think all of us have like a story where we told someone about a trade, and then at every level they would tell you to sell, but
Yeah.
like, you would never listen to them.
Right, right, exactly. And it's like an intuition thing, right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
30K is a lot of money, 50K is a lot of money, but hey, this is going higher. Just trust me on this.
Yeah. Yeah, borderline delusional. It's quite funny actually, because I think that mindset these days is, not possible in a lot of ways. Like I think it's a very different game, but man, that was such a golden time of trading.
What's your biggest fumble?
My biggest fumble, I'm trying to think. I think the biggest fumble, at least that I can think of, is I mean, there's a few that come to mind. One is I had opportunity to invest in Circle pretty early on and
Oh, damn.
decided that, it was something not worth it at the time. And then they IPO'd and immediately IPO price, I was immediately like, oh man, like I really, really regret this. And then it ended up going like whatever, 10x higher. So that's certainly a private market one. And then a public market one. I mean, there's tons. Like almost every coin that's ever run to a billion, I've definitely been in the token at some point. Some like Farcoin at 100K and selling at 400K before it goes to $2 billion.
Mhm.
Others, maybe I ride a little bit higher. Um, I actually think the biggest fumble is not even my own trade, but it's advice that I gave to a friend. So in January when Trump launched, a friend of mine found it very early, put in 50K, and before it went 100x higher. And I remember him texting me like, "Yo, like, is this real? Like, you should know, you would know." And I was like, you're dumb. This is obviously the fakest token ever. Like they try to scam this every other week. So he looks at me and he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, has he tweeted about it? He has not. So he ends up selling it for like, very much break even. Then maybe 5 minutes later, Trump posts on Truth Social, token rips up. And I think he ended up losing out on like, I don't know, $7 or $8 million. And he doesn't really bring it up these days, but that's the biggest fumble that I can think of that, I feel culpable for in some ways.
Yeah, in a way, our normie friends did better with something like Trump. Like I saw that trade as well, and I was like, it doesn't make any sense. Like he hasn't tweeted. Like why would anyone launch? Why would a president launch a token? But then all of my friends in the US, they were like, this is the next big thing. So all of them made money, and like I was sidelined.
Yeah, I was with you. I psyops him, I psyops myself, and just watched it go higher every day.
Who's your favorite KOL right now?
My favorite KOL, huh? I mean, there's a lot. I think that I really look up to a lot of the people who are very authentic on the timeline, right? I think in this industry, even the most trustworthy people over time can kind of degrade to be scammers or, burn their reputation. So I think it's going to be somebody that has continued to be like the same character, up, down, whatever. There's a number of people to pick from. I honestly think like not even my favorite KOL, but one of my favorite people in crypto is
Okay.
Uber. He's, been somebody that since the early idea of FOMO has been super supportive and a design partner and a thought partner and a trading partner. And he's just one of those guys that has this raw intuition. I think it doesn't really show as much on Twitter because he kind of refrains from posting as much as he used to. But it's this thing where like you get into a conversation with him and you start talking product or you start talking BD or growth, and it almost feels like he's been with you in the room for every conversation. So he's a great person to just like jam on ideas with, and I respect that side of him much more than like the KOL side or whatever. But I think people like that are always true, authentic, and just raw about how they view things and their perception on the market and the perception of the product is someone that's always valuable to have in your corner, no matter what it looks like.
I think a lot of people on crypto Twitter have a very black or white perception of KOL accounts, right? But these are like some of the smartest people I know because they think about markets and like products from a very intuitive perspective. Like they've been studying these markets for a very long time, and they're actually some of the smartest people I know.
Yeah, definitely. It's just this intuition that you build up because markets are intuition, right? And I think that extrapolates to a lot of different areas as long as people feel compelled to like apply themselves there.
What do you think about the state of the trenches right now? Like a lot of people are saying we've topped. The markets are pretty lame right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my macro view used to be that we top sometime in Q4 or even Q1. I think that I've continued to like move away from that thesis largely as, crypto becomes more and more globalized. There's a lot more regulation, a lot more institutional interest. And I think we've been saying the same things for many years, but it feels like now is like full court press. Like everything is kind of in its raw form, able to have a lot of potential. And I think the trenches have shifted gears in a lot of different ways. And at this point, I don't think that the trenches are killable. I actually think like you'll
Mm.
have moments of lull, but you won't have 2 year bear cycles in the trenches. There's, it's too easy to create a token on something that just happened. It's too easy to, find people who want to like actively run a community over time. It's too easy to like have these things kind of readily sproutable. So I think that, maybe majors and Bitcoin and everything do see a downturn and maybe a majority of tokens fall 90% as they always do. But I don't think the trenches ever die. I think the trenches are here forever now and they're going to be the final form of speculation, whether it's in a token or prediction markets or, whatever it is. And I think these things all look to converge over the course of, months and years.
Yeah, I think like every now and then there will be one main runner that will like revive the trenches for a while and then back to like the dullness again. So we've gone through the lull for a while now, like so hopefully the next runner is around the corner.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Ansem's tweet not too long ago, but he was talking about how like instead of 4 year cycles, think about them as like 4 month cycles. And in my mind, I was like, man, that is really true because you think like I'm gonna hold this token for the whole cycle. And you were right, but you were just wrong on the time frame. You don't mean 4 years, you mean 2 months, you mean 3 months. Like these things rotate very, very quickly. So even the deepest theses on projects, like they're very short lived when liquidity is constantly rotating. And I think when you can condense a cycle into a smaller view, you actually have a lot more advantage because you can be a lot more nimble with how you view the changing landscape.
Okay, last question. Like, what would be your one piece of advice to anyone, any normie that's like getting onboarded to FOMO?
Yeah, my advice would be take your time, right? Like it's very easy to come onto this app and look for the lowest market cap coin and just put all your money into it and then, tomorrow be at zero. I think that one of the things that's really important is to understand that in a lot of ways, like there's no free lunch, right? Like sure you might get lucky, but it's possible that you'll bring that back to the market at some point if, you hit this one coin, you have no idea why it goes up and you end up being very lucky with timing and entry and exit. But I think the people who really try to understand like the behavior around what's going on, what are metas, what are narratives, why are people buying, what are relative points that people sell, and we're going to do a lot in our part to do this like 10-part education series for users so they can go 0 to 100 within these articles. And it's going to break down every concept in crypto, do it in a way that's very, very familiar for normies, and give them the tools to like use FOMO in the best ways possible. That's going to be very subjective to each person, of course. But that's my main advice. I think the best normies that I've onboarded that continue to use the app and are profitable, some you see on the leaderboard, are the very people who just took their time with it. They understood how to learn this game. And on its face, it's just like any other game, right? Like you don't just go to, the last level of your campaign when you're playing like, Elden Ring or whatever it is immediately. You have to build up to it. In the same ways, you have to build your tools, you have to build your framework, you have to build your mental models, and that'll carry you a very long way. And I think that this is why I'm really excited to like continue to like, educate people and get people into this very cool world of crypto.
Love it. I think I love your approach of like education, and you're super active on Twitter. I love the newsletter because it actually is a great resource to, kind of catch up quickly on what's going on in the trenches. And yeah, like more power to you guys. Hopefully, by the next time there's like a meta and a runner, like FOMO is the app everyone is using.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate the time as well. It was nice to chat.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Arjun, take care.